I'm thrilled to have so many people again here in the peristyle for a Master's Series lecture sponsored by the Toledo Museum of Art Ambassadors. Our wonderful ambassadors have been working at the museum for 6 decades, doing lots of interesting things and innovating them. Today they had a December luncheon and there were 120 or more there. But any ambassadors who are here, please do stand up. I want to recognize you. And Susan Cruz, the president of our ambassadors. We've had a wonderful year of Master Series lectures and also of engagement by the community in what we're doing in trying to teach people how to see better. We all think we know how to see, but how many of us have ever in school or in college or university done a course in how to see? Because it's something we can train people to do. There are methodologies of seeing. We know a lot about how we see, particularly from what we know about the human brain with the benefit of digital technology in the last 20 years. And that all helps us to be able to become better at negotiating communication skills and behavioral skills and social skills, all of which we know we need in our society. So I'm thrilled that today Anne Mack, who is the sister of our wonderful Jeff Mack, who runs our glass pavilion, and she's a very noted trend spotter. She's probably the leading trend spotter in America. She's often, she will be I'm sure this week, on TV and Good Morning America and so on. She has announced in her 10 trends for 2014, a important trend is, do we think visual? And that's so important for the way that we use technology and the way that art museums can impact our lives. And it's something we're working very strongly at here in Toledo Museum of Art. We've had great support from so many businesses, and tonight I'd like to thank Huntington Bank, because Huntington have taken on the sponsorship of the Thursday night openings that we have. We were open on Friday, and for over 20 years we've had great success with It's Friday, but on July 1 we started to open on Thursday nights as well, and to make it a night particularly that would welcome young people the way Fridays had focused on families for many years. So I'd like you all to give a round of applause to Huntington Bank. I'd like to thank Sharon Spire, Regional President, and Bob Schoolmaker, Senior Vice President, and all the staff from Huntington who are here tonight. As you know, probably, I hope you do, that I worked for 8 years in Australia. I worked with a lot of Indigenous people in that great continent, and body art was part of their art. An art form that goes back in that culture, the oldest continuously living culture on this planet, about 60,000 years. It involves scarification, it involves body paint, it involves the expression of your culture through painting on your body. And this phenomenon is significant in culture. So the idea I wanted to put before you tonight is, it always seems strange to me we talk about the arts and culture. We talk about cultural institutions like Toledo Museum of Art, which is really an arts institution. The proper description of the word culture, the best definition I've ever heard of the word culture, is what we do round here. Culture is what we do round here. Now, of course, what we do round here is different from what we do over there. And even in our own culture, we have lots of different cultures. Some people do certain things round here, and certain people do other things round here. That's called multicultural. And all of that cultures our environment, allowing it to grow. And one of the rather wonderful phenomena of recent times, and so much has changed in our lives, especially with the digital revolution, has been the growth of popular culture. Popular culture, a great phenomenon that has grown since the Victorian age. And popular culture of the 1960s has led to a lot of crossover. And one of the crossovers that's happened is that body art in Western culture has crossed over from something that was minority and somewhat alternative and different to something that has gone mainstream. The nature of the way that operates in our society tells us a lot about our culture, and arts institutions are hugely important in that. And an arts institution, Toledo Museum of Art, has been very important to our speaker tonight. And to introduce our speaker tonight, I want to invite Helona Norton Westbrook to come to the stage in a minute. Helona is the third of our Mellon Fellows. I want you to know that this is a first-class institution. We aim to be best in class in this country. After the National Gallery of Art in Washington, we're the most visited art museum per capita by metropolitan population of any in the country. That we're the best community museum in the country. But you make us that. And that helps us to attract great people to Toledo and to help to offer people the opportunity to experience this great institution. And we need your support to do that. But it was thrilling to have the Mellon Fellowship established here. Helena Norton Westbrook came from California. She studied at the Courtauld Institute in London and at the University of Manchester in England. She has particularly studied the history of museums. She's the third of our Mellon Fellows. She was selected from 15 candidates who'd all completed their PhDs in art history in the last 5 years from 6 different countries. Don't ever let anybody tell you Toledo's not doing great things. We have to do the great things for Toledo, and one of them is to invite people like Helena to come to the stage and introduce Paul Timman. Helena.
Hello. We are honored to have Paul Timman here tonight as our Master Series speaker. Paul is a Toledo area native. He grew up in Maumee and Perrysburg and has fond memories of attending art classes at TMA in his youth. He graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art in 1995 with a degree in sculptured glass. After graduation, Paul developed an interest in tattooing, seeing it as both a form of self-expression and a new artistic medium with which to experiment. Paul's passion for tattooing ultimately led him to Los Angeles, where he began working at the renowned Sunset Strip Tattoo. Paul's skills and artistry meant that he was soon in high demand. 15 years after establishing himself in Hollywood, Paul has become a celebrity in his own right. His tattoos can be found on the bodies of many of Hollywood's biggest stars, including Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Drew Barrymore, Mark Wahlberg, and Angelina Jolie. Tonight, Paul will reflect on how art and life are inextricably linked and discuss the role the Japanese prints have played in inspiring his work. We are so pleased to have him here with us in Toledo tonight. Please join me in welcoming Paul Timman to the stage.
Thank you. First, you got to kind of bear with me a little bit because since I've been home, I've been losing my voice talking to so many of you out there. So bear with me a little bit. First, I wanted to thank the Toledo Museum of Art for having me, and thank all of you for attending. And I kind of want to do this lecture in sort of 3 parts. First part, I kind of want to talk about how I got where I am and sort of where I came from. And I grew up right here along with the majority of you guys. I took art classes at the Toledo Museum of Art when I was a kid, and it pretty much had a profound impact on me going on to be an artist and to try and do great things, express my my vision through the world, through my artwork. And that's kind of the way I portray art, is that each person's story is being told through their artwork, whether it's a tattoo, or whether it's a painting, or whether it's a song, or whether it is a craftsman building, a beautiful amphitheater like this. So the way I look at art is it's not just some of the things hanging on the walls here in the museum, but it's the way that a landscape artist, or would build a golf course, for example. So there's a lot of different things that I consider to be art. I was taking the classes here, and then, I always loved art in high school, and I knew I wanted to go to art school, so that was sort of where I went next with it, and ended up attending the Cleveland Institute of Art, and just pretty much further progressed in my art exploration. And without the Cleveland Institute of Art, I wouldn't be where I am today, because that was one of the things that pretty much let me know that you could do anything you wanted to do with art and go anywhere you wanted to go with it. I got done with art school, and then a friend of mine and we headed west because that was where we wanted to be. And for me, when I got into tattooing, California was pretty much where the main big tattoos were coming from. people had more money there to get tattooed. So it just kind of worked for me, and it was like, all right, I guess we're going west. So, we packed up an old car, drove out to Los Angeles. We did the classic Americana thing where you sleep in your car because we couldn't find a place to live, and we would take turns. One person sleeping in the front seat the first night, and then swapping out to the back seat because the steering wheel would dig in our back. So the back seat had a little more room, and that's what we did. And eventually, it's like that classic saying: with great risk comes great reward. I ended up getting into one of the premier tattoo shops in the country, let alone the world, where rock stars, and actors, and actresses, and anybody who was anybody in the entertainment industry was getting tattooed. So that kind of, people like that have endless pockets to get full body suits. And the guys that were working there at the time were all the guys that I looked up to in tattooing. I mean, those guys were doing head to toe, full-blown Japanese body suits. So when I was visiting here this summer, and they had talked about having some Japanese prints, a big exhibit, I thought, man, that's right up my alley, because that's what has helped to inspire tattooists, and that's what basically it's kind of helped progress tattooing along. So I guess the second part of it now is kind of talking about some of the actual artwork and the similarities between Japanese prints and the direct correlation into some of the Japanese tattoos. So, a lot of these images are just things that we have books and reference books at our shop that we use on a daily basis, and just draw inspiration from. Some of these things we take straight from the book, because you can't draw them any better than what they already are. I mean, these things are centuries old, and they're timeless and limitless, and I couldn't take some of these drawings and do them any more justice than what the old masters have done. So, again, there's different colors in these things, and there's different thicknesses of the lines, and that's what we do in a lot of our Japanese tattoos. We have a calligraphy line that goes from thick to thin, and we alter that line, so it's not just one single line. When you look at some of this stuff, you can see the textile patterns and the geometric ideas with some of the patterns, and they're beautiful. But who would have thought from things like that, and if you notice in her collar, like the really geometric patterns, and then the cherry blossom prints, things like this, not just me, but a lot of the guys that I work with, we all draw inspiration from a lot of these things. So, we do cherry blossom flowers just falling across a woman's back. And somebody's like, well, where'd you get that idea? And it's like, well, look at her fabric. There's beautiful cherry blossoms, and it's just kind of perfect inspiration. And again, her collar, that geometric thing, some of the prints and some of the ideas in the fabric here, it's the same kind of story. So, who would have thought that a tribal tattoo would go on to be inspired from some Japanese patterns that would be worn by a woman as a kimono? So when you look at this, most people just walk by this tattoo and think, okay, yeah, it's a tribal tattoo, that's great, but when you really stop and think about where it came from, now it's got a whole other story to it. It's got, something totally different. So there's, this is a gentleman that we did a whole shin piece on him. The top portion is, in my mind, a little bit of a cherry blossom design. That's loosely interpreted, but it's also a geometric pattern. So it's kind of one of those things that, I guess, is it the art that imitates life, or that sort of inspires life, or is it life that inspires art? And it's kind of like that classic, which came first, the chicken or the egg? For centuries, the printmaking helped inspire the tattooist, and then it goes back around where eventually we'll get some images where the printmakers were doing prints of men that are fully tattooed. So it's kind of interesting in the sense that it's not just in this culture, but in all cultures nowadays and in all societies. I mean, if you guys do get a chance to go see the Japanese prints in the exhibit here, you know, there's another artist with some prints that have some things downstairs. He's a modern, current artist, Paul Binney. I mean, his prints are of people with tattoos. So that's kind of how he's honoring the, that's his version of honoring the modern woodblock masters, and he's, you know, that's his take on it. So again, it's kind of gone full circle in a sense that it's just, you know, it's undescribable to me, and I think it's really great how that circle just never ends, and it keeps going and it keeps giving. If you notice, I mean, this is a real classic Japanese print, but in the top, those clouds, the way that blue kind of comes down and settles over the sun. I mean, and I know there's probably a lot of tattoo artists and a lot of tattoo people in the crowd tonight. I mean, that's a classic, really great, soft gray wash that we use for a lot of the backgrounds, not just in Japanese tattoos, but in all of our tattoos. So when we do things like that, I mean, we draw from this without even knowing some of the times that originally this is where some of these ideas came from. Pretty much perfect example of a Japanese print, but if you look closely, look at the waves, look at how they roll, look at what we call Japanese finger waves, and they're just real classic, and most people would walk by that and say, okay, cool, great. But if you look at it next to something like this, that is the start of a quarter sleeve and a chest piece on a gentleman that I'm working on. And now you see where I get my wave images from. And you can kind of understand a little bit, basically where they come from and what they do. And it's that inspiration that has helped inspire me, that I'm going on to inspire other artists now, because they see my work and they kind of get inspired by just tattoos, and then they either want to do paintings of tattoos or prints or photograph, or even, you know, tattoo themselves. So I mean, this is just something that I ended up drawing on this gentleman, and we had spoke about what he wanted, and we ended up, you know, settling on like a real classic Japanese waves and water, and that was it. And we put a couple little cherry blossoms in there here and there, but you know, that last Japanese print pretty much says it all and helped to inspire this. So there's, you know, in the process of it, you know, after I drew it all onto the marker, get it outlined, go in, we're shading it little by little. It's hard to see in this, but it's different shades of gray, just as in that Japanese print. There's darker shades, there's lighter shades. So a lot of those things help to push the foreground and the background and create all those things. So by doing a darker background, it now pushes those other waves forward, so you get depth. And that's hard to do with tattooing. It's not as easy to do as you can do with painting, because there are so many layers you can do with the painting. But that's kind of how we do it, little by little. So there is, you know, kind of majority of it finished. Some of those waves in front are going to be a really soft gray, so they're going to stand out and pop a little more. And then the images behind are going to be a lot darker. You know, that's just one of the things that most people would never have imagined that you could learn from a Japanese print and put it forward into a tattoo. You can walk through the walls here, and majority of the images of prints are of nature and birds and things that they had around them at the time to draw inspiration from. And flowers, a lot of flowers, a lot of butterflies. And they all go hand in hand with tattooing. I mean, I get people to come in all the time and say, hey, I want a whole sleeve. And I go, how about flowers? And, a lot of the guys go, well, isn't that kind of girly? And I go, no, not if you do it right. My whole sleeve is all flowers and waves. And they go, oh, well, your stuff looks great. I like something like that. So we draw from a lot of the Japanese prints and take these things and kind of run with them and either do our own version of them or redraw them or steal the inspiration. Real classic. If you notice on this one, sort of at the very bottom, how it goes from that really dark to that light. And on the top, it's the same. It kind of goes from the dark coming down. If you just hold on to that idea for another image later, you'll see exactly what they're trying to capture when I show you another slide. Same thing with this bird. I mean, that right there would be a perfect tattoo on somebody's chest, flying down their chest. And looking at this, most people would kind of go, yeah, I don't see it. But if you kind of have the vision, it would be pretty much great. There's my sort of version that I did on a girl. It's on her hip. This kind of goes up under her back. And I did it in a little not so traditional style, that it's done in all soft black and grays, which is also known as sumi. So it's, again, another Japanese watercolor painting style. So there's no outline on this. It's all just done in really, really soft black and grays. And it was sort of inspired by some of these birds. Real classic Japanese print. Again, the thing that I'm drawn to on this is the hair. The real fine lines, and then in the fabric, those clouds, or we at Sunset Strip Tattoo, we call those jelly roll clouds. That's just a kind of name we've coined them. And I've done thousands of those clouds on thousands of clients, and I'll do thousands more. And each time I do them, I change them, I vary them, I do a different twist with it. Same thing with my waves. I mean, you'll see in some of these images, some of the koi fish they have later. My waves are different from koi fish to koi fish, and my koi fish have changed throughout the years. And if you look at some of these prints, the people that did them changed their drawings slightly from time to time. And that's kind of the evolution of an artist doing their thing and changing and being different. Because if you do the same thing day in and day out, it gets old and you don't want to do your artwork anymore. So this one I put up here, kind of for the same thing, just to kind of show the movement of the waves. And a lot of times we do these sort of backgrounds behind what we call the finger waves, and they don't have a rhyme or a reason, but they have this movement, and they give this feeling, and they kind of really help to help the pieces flow and kind of have more roll on the body. And that's just something that, if you look at those waves, I mean, you can see that those waves, you get the idea of you're at the beach and those things are actually barrel rolling up onto the sand, like right in front of you. So again, another really classic image that the Japanese masters used to do was tons and tons of flowers. Peonies were real big, lotus flowers, cherry blossoms. I mean, obviously everybody knows the cherry blossoms, they bloom and they fall, within a few days or a week. So you get this whole, especially in Washington, D.C., I don't know if any of you have ever been there for that, but the cherry blossoms fall off the trees. It's like it's snowing. And there's just something really aesthetically pleasing about that. And you see that time and time again in Japanese art because of how powerful that image is. And we try to bring that into our tattoos so that you get that same kind of feeling. So doing this kind of tattoo, you can see exactly where I get my inspiration from now. And it's just one of those things that most people go, oh, it's just a flower. But yeah, and it goes back to the masters. And it's the kanji that I did on her is done in that sumi style. So it's done from a really dark gray or a black at the base, and as it goes up, each character, it kind of softens and we kind of call it ghost image. And that's just a close-up. And this kind of is done a little different because this was done real classically with a lot of the old Japanese tattoo artists, where they would outline it in a specific color, but without a black line. So the tattoo artists kind of developed their own version of doing the peonies, and that also helped with the Sumi watercolor artists that were doing that as well. So I don't know if the Sumi watercolor artist actually did that first, or if the Japanese tattooist did it first, and then somebody stole it from one, and it just kind of bounced back and forth now. So that's the whole idea with that one. Another perfect example, in a sense that you've got the nature, you get the birds, you get the flowers. You can see in the leaves that there's a darker green on one side and a softer green on the other. The flowers have this transition of color. So it goes from a darker color to a lighter color. And that's the same kind of thing that we do with our tattoos. If I do a flower, I go from a dark purple to a light purple. If I do a blue, I go from a dark blue to a light blue. And you get that same watercolor transition that they achieved there. So I don't know if it's something that lends itself so perfectly to tattooing, or if the tattooist literally were just kind of trying to mimic the great printmakers at the time. Because you got to remember, these printmakers pretty much inspired almost all modern printmakers and painters. I mean, these guys were inspiration to everybody from Europe and France and all the great artists. These guys were, centuries before, and the stuff that they did, you see in old the French avant-garde, when they did the big posters and things like that. I mean, they stole from these guys. This is who they took from. So it's not just tattoo artists that were trying to sort of recreate this or use it as inspiration. It was really pretty much all artists. Same thing. Butterfly and flowers. Peony flowers. You couldn't ask for a better tattoo. If somebody walked in and said, I want to get a butterfly and peony, I'd be like, great, when are we doing it? I mean, that's, right up I love that kind of thing. So when I had a woman come in and want to get a big cover up, I thought, let's do some butterflies, let's do bunches of cherry blossoms, let's add some of the black and gray, kind of smoky mist, again, like I talked about in another print. You saw those kind of clouds rolled down the top of it. Perfect example of how this kind of mimics it without even trying to mimic it. It's just something I did, and it's something from looking at those prints I subconsciously do without sometimes intentionally doing it. Sometimes I intentionally take those things and put them in my artwork, but majority of the time, it's just from viewing these things for so long and for so many years, and because we have such a huge collection at my work and at my house as well, that I constantly am going through these books, and I just see this stuff day in and day out, and it's in my memory banks. It's there. So I draw from it without even knowing. So again, if you look at some of the flowers, you look at the gradation going from the red to the pink, and the same thing with the greens. You get all the different tones, and there's browns, and different shades of greens in there. And the butterflies all have a lot of different colors. And if you look at that blue in the butterfly, going back to that Japanese print, I mean, it goes from a dark blue to a light blue. If I did it all just one shade of blue, it'd be flat. It wouldn't have any depth to it. So that's why we kind of try to put different colors in them and do different things. And even the transparencies of where the smoke kind of goes over some of these things, and you lose a little bit, and you see a little bit. It's one of those things that you'll see a lot of that in the Japanese prints, and it's just something that with the tattoos, it lends itself very well to tattooing, and it's something that we picked up on as tattooists, and I don't know if it's something that intentionally everyone tried to do, again, like copying the masters, or if it's just something that tattooing has this quality about it, that it works very well with tattooing. So here you can see a little bit of the cover-up, it's a little more camouflaged, and in some of the flowers you can see slight little bit of the cover-up, but for the most part, it generally does a really good job of covering up her old tattoo. We talked about that before we did the tattoo that it wasn't completely going to be gone 100%, but no one would ever see it unless you really kind of pointed it out to them. So, and there's just a close-up of one of the butterflies to kind of show some of the detail and the color and kind of what you can do with the tattoos and the quality of line work you can get nowadays. And the, you know, majority of the people here all either know or have seen the tattoo being done or have them or even done tattoos themselves. So, but for those of you who don't, it's kind of, it might open your eyes a little bit to what is possible with tattooing, which is kind of cool because it's come a long way. And you know, I've been tattooing for 20 years, and in the last 20 years, it's taken a whole new different twist in what is possible with tattooing as to what was possible before that. So this one is pretty much cherry blossom tree, or you know, obviously in the foreground and branches. And again, if you look at some of those blues, the way they have the different gradations, and even on the tree, how it goes from that black really quick to that sort of soft gray. And then that sky in the background, it's got that pink to the orange or to the yellow. Classic Japanese woodblock prints. I mean, this one is just screaming Japanese woodblock prints. There's a certain quality about them that is just great. And that same quality lends itself to tattooing. So, again, drawing inspiration from, but putting my own twist to it. This is actually a Asian girl, and I did we decided to just do all soft grays on her and do it a little different. So there's different shades of gray, and the flowers are sort of done, you know, just as an outline gray with no color in them, but it just kind of gives a little bit of a different feel to it. So it was, you know, it was a really fun piece to do. And she came back and got a bunch more tattoos because she loves that. And everywhere she goes, people comment on it because it's a little different. It's not your classic tattoo that you see. But I've sort of gotten a little bit of a name for myself in the sense that I do these sumi watercolor style tattoos. And they're really soft, and they lend themselves very well to women wearing them, kind of like that woman with the flower and the Japanese characters on her arm. There's no outline, they're really soft, they're really subtle, and they just have a really great, you know, sort of feminine feel to them. And this is the reason why I put this one up here is, it's, again, if you kind of look at the fabric, there's different things going on in the fabric that we draw from, inspiration from. But again, the Japanese cherry blossom branch. Now this one's done a little different. This one's looks like it's done in, you know, color, and she just pulled it off the tree, and the leaves haven't fallen yet. But again, this is something that I do a lot for a lot of women because they like that there's no outline on the actual branch and it's real subtle. But a lot of times I add some color to the actual flowers themselves. And I've gotten, and I do tons of these all day long now because they come in and look at my book, and the women love these, and they just, you know, want them down their arm or on their ribs or on their leg or wherever. But that's kind of one of the things that I've been getting a lot of press for, is doing the sumi style prints. And they're fun to do. They kind of leave you to do your own expression, and you know, you can color them differently and do different versions of them, so they are a lot of fun to do. This one is, in a lot of the tattoo images that we do, when we do a full back piece, when we do a sleeve, we pretty much do sort of the yin and yang, or a struggle. And in a lot of art and a lot of paintings and a lot of sculptures, you'll see that there's always kind of two images or two figures or something that is battling something else. You know, it could be man versus man. It could be man versus animal. It could be man versus nature. It could be man against himself. I mean, the classic, the thinker pose. You know, I mean, you don't know what's going on in his head. You don't know what the idea behind that is. Is that man thinking, pondering on, you know, what he's going to do the next day? Is he pondering heavy on what the real reason of life is, and it's like that yin and yang and that power struggle and that good versus bad. And this would be, I mean, you could literally take this and put it on somebody's back and then put some background behind it, and it would make a remarkable tattoo. And we do a lot of that stuff. When we draw ideas from images of this, and what I would do for something like this, I would take it and put tattoos on these guys when I would tattoo it on someone. Give it my own little twist, kind of add to it a little bit. Same thing here. I mean, classic samurai warrior battling Japanese demons, or as they're called, onis. And you'll see in a couple minutes here how, I mean, we tattoo these things all day long, the onis and the demons. And they're a lot of fun because they are three-toed or two-toed, or, one of them has a hook for a hand, or they've got different hair on them, and the way their bodies are, and their different horns and features, they're fun to tattoo. They make it a lot of fun. And the same thing, when you get to switch up all the fabric on these things and change them and create different images, it just makes for a fun tattoo. So this one was an old master woodblock print. This one is a current Japanese tattoo master, Horiyoshi III, that created a book and did drawings. And if I didn't tell you that, you would have thought this was a Japanese print from way back when. So you can see exactly how the tattooing is pretty much right in the stream with the woodblock prints. I mean, you can't beat that, and you can't deny that the two of them are pretty much hand in hand. Look at the patterns on the print. And this is something that you can tattoo like that. And then look at the oni, and look at the battle between the two, good versus evil. Look at the background. Look at what's going on. There's leaves, maple leaves blowing in the wind, and it's kind of craziness. So it's the same thing that's happening in the woodblock prints. It's art imitating life, and sort of life imitating art. Another one from Horiyoshi. You can't, I mean, they're perfect. And this is a woodblock print, and it's probably derived from some of the old theater productions and their sort of take on it. And again, this sort of stuff makes for perfect tattoos. I tattoo Japanese masks all day long, whether it's a Hanya mask or a No mask, and done from the kabuki stage things. We do these things all day long, and we add our own little makeup to them, put our own little twist. So it's just a lot of fun to do those things. And this is another one that is another mask that's from Horiyoshi. So again, he's not doing anything different than the printmakers were doing. I mean, they pretty much go hand in hand. And if Horiyoshi might have got introduced to woodblock prints, he may be doing woodblock prints instead of tattooing, and vice versa. If some of the woodblock print people had been introduced to tattooing, maybe they had picked up tattooing and been a tattoo legend in their time. You never know. This one, I wanted to show, because I stole some images directly from this for a whole sleeve that I did on a client of mine. And he works with a lot of bands, and he's a music guy, and he came in one day and he said, I want to do a sleeve, and I want to do a whole Horiyoshi sleeve. And I said, okay, so Hokusai sleeve. And I said, okay, what do you want to do? He's like, well, I want to do the Hokusai wave, which everyone here has seen the Hokusai wave. Whether you know it's the Hokusai wave or not, you've seen it. And then we went through a bunch of Hokusai books, and we picked out certain images that we liked and that I thought would work very well for his arm and what would go good. And we kind of went back and forth and brainstormed. And when we got it all figured out, there was a little bit of my twist to it and a lot of Hokusai's work to it. So here it's as if you're looking in the water and you're kind of looking down. And you see the turtles through the water, and the turtle might be rising out of the water. So you see that water break line where the blue kind of starts and fades back. And again, that's one of those things that what we call the transparency in the tattooing. So you kind of make something a little lighter behind that gray or behind that blue and something a little darker on the other side of it to show that it's either floating underwater or in front of a cloud or behind a cloud. And that's kind of how we do that and mimic this. So we chose one of his mountain views, and if you look at all the little dots and all the little speckles, and again, remember that blue cloud, or those blue at the top and coming down, and the blue at the bottom going up. And if you look at those clouds, and remember those clouds right there, they're very similar to those jelly roll clouds that we do so much tattooing. And we kind of just draw inspiration from all of that, and little by little, you keep adapting and making it your own. That is the classic Hokusai wave. So I know everybody's seen it. It's just, kind of a household name at this point. And this is the sort of idea in the sleeve that we did on him. So it starts out with the waves at the bottom, and it's got the Hokusai wave, and then it's got the mountain. We even do the little sort of dribble or the little speckled darker browns going up to it, and then my sort of ideas of just the sort of softer black and gray mountains in the background as they're pushed back. So you notice there are mountains around, but there's not as much detail to it. And then it kind of goes up into what is sort of a little my take on the Japanese rocks, and then one of the animals from Hokusai, and one of his snowy trees, and flower and birds, and then a moon or a sun up above. And it's just all of the images from Hokusai pretty much lend itself beautifully to being tattooed. Like you just can't argue that. So there's sort of an inside view. There's the turtle, and there's our twist on the blue and the water, and that one little section that kind of goes over the top of the turtle. It's a little lighter there, and you see the break in the color. The gray and the clouds turning into the water, the mist, and there's little trees in front of the mountain there. So it's little by little, all those things pretty much lend itself beautifully to tattooing. Again, you can see like the calligraphied line going from thick to thin, and all the different little textured areas in there. It's just, this stuff's a lot of fun to do with tattoos. And, we probably wouldn't be doing a lot of it if it wasn't for some of the Japanese woodblock prints. And the trees in the background there, again, those are done in a real dark at the top, and as they go down, they just turn into like a real light mist as they go down. I was walking through the museum yesterday, and these snow-covered trees, I mean, you can go for yourself this weekend and look at half of the Japanese prints. One out of every three has these snow-filled trees on them. Why? Because they're aesthetically beautiful. They work. There's something really pretty about them. You can't put your finger on it, but there's just something that's neat about them when you see them. So I think that's why so many of the artists use them. So there you can see the transparency kind of going over the moon a little bit, and the idea with that, again, going from the dark purple to the light, and the flip color on the other side of the flower. So there's a lot of different things you can do to kind of make them really creative and have a lot of depth. And there's a better picture of the trees, kind of just this real soft snow, like it's blanketed the trees, and if you were to stand under it and a bird would land on it, you'd get covered in snow. A little close-up of the Hokusai wave. And same thing, those waves have helped create, that chess piece I did on that gentleman. It's just something that you take those waves and they grow, and you keep drawing them, and they keep transitioning into different waves, and they turn into different flowing things that sometimes aren't explainable, but I just like the way they look and the curves that I create. It's just something that I do. Same thing with this. It's like the waterfall coming down, and it just kind of spreads out and bounces off. And that's what a lot of the things in our tattooing, where the background kind of fills that, and it's got this sort of power that it bounces off of everything. And this I included because of that same gradation in that gown. I mean, if you look in her kimono, it starts out dark with the cherry blossoms, And as it goes down, it turns to a different pattern, but it gets into a softer gray. It's just kind of interesting. And I think aesthetically, I just like it. I don't know why, but I do. But I do that in my artwork anyways. It's just something that, we do those gradations. Classic image that you've seen thousands of times in tattooing, koi fish. And again, it's the koi fish either battling something or trying to swim away from something or swim upstream. In the Japanese mythology, the koi fish swim upstream and turn into a dragon. So you'll even see half koi, half dragon in some things. If you look at the background, you look at the movement of the blue and some of the lines creating different things. We draw from all of that. So perfect, inspiration for a koi fish. You can't get a better direct correlation than from that to that. I mean, you don't even have to change it, Maple leaves in the background, and the way the maple leaf going underneath the water is sort of lost, so it's softer, so you get that different feel, which is what you see in some of the prints. And you see my waves here are a lot different. This one's a little older, so I did these waves a little different style as to some of the different things. So you can see the lines going over the koi fish, which is kind of giving this movement like he's sort of shooting out of the water, and that water is dragging behind him. And that's kind of one of the tricks that we do to help, with the Japanese prints. They can use something other than just the water to do that. We have to kind of work with what we got to work with. So, but at least you can see. Now this is another guy, and you can see my waves are a little different. And this guy was in town from Switzerland or something, and he wanted to cover up. So we had to do this one in 1 or 2 sessions, actually. Two days. We did 2 days back to back. The poor guy, I hurt him. He really did not like coming in the second day, because the second day we did the inside of his arm, and that's more sensitive anyways. And I felt so bad for that dude, because he was hurting. He was glad when it was done. But again, it's like, my waves are a little different, but it's that classic image of the koi fish. And it's the water coming over from the back now, and you got to work with what you got to work with. So this one was a cover-up. So there's some things that are a little different about this one. But if I didn't have to cover it up, I would have done things a little different. But I used some of the scales and put the markings on the scales to kind of cover up some of the things that we were hiding. And I can't even remember what we were hiding, actually. But it's just that explosion of the waves, kind of where they hit and bounce. That was what I'm talking about, where they go back to that other Japanese print, where the waterfall comes down, they hit a rock and they splash off, and it hits another rock and splashes off. So that's where we take those ideas from and kind of run with it and do our own thing and have a lot of fun with it. And that's where he was hurting. So, classic lotus flower. It looks a little weird because when I took the photos, he had a little bit of blood coming out, but it's, I did a real light blue, and then we did the purple on the flip side, and it was a lot of fun. Just a great tattoo. And again, another koi fish. So the reason why I put so many koi fishes in here is, like I said, there's thousands of them, but each one can be done different. Each one can be unique, and you can change all these, but yet they're all pretty much classic Japanese woodblock prints. And this one kind of lends itself a little more to the Japanese sumi watercolor painting, where some of this is outlined, but not all of it. And some of it's outlined with black, and some of it's outlined with softer gray, and there's different shades of gray, and then it's kind of got that same water feel where you kind of see it through the water, and it's swimming below. And then this is on the inside of her arm. This is that girl who has the peony flower, Heather, and on her back is a cherry blossom branch coming up, and the flowers are sort of transitioning off and falling off. And we've actually gone down her whole sleeve now with other images. So, but again, it just kind of shows you how you can do each koi differently, so that they're not all the same, and it makes it fun for me and the client. So it makes it kind of interesting. And then another one. So this is the same guy who's got the hokusai arm, And on his left arm, actually, we have Where the Wild Things Are. He did pretty much the whole book of Where the Wild Things Are, the characters down below, and then a bunch of the guys, we did them in spaceships up above. That was kind of fun. We just did our own version of it. But same thing, and if you look on the right side of his back, you can see those waterfalls. And exactly what I'm talking about, where they kind of come down and bounce and keep going. And then when they come down and splash on the tail of the koi fish there. So, without those Japanese woodblock prints, I don't know if we would be doing this kind of stuff. Who knows? It's like if you take away the chicken or you take away the egg, which came first? I don't know. This one I included. It's that same idea, that real black background going out to the gray. And you can see it doesn't make sense. It's just an artist's brush stroke, or a stroke or a movement or a feeling that they had. And lately with a lot of my artwork, that's what I've been doing with it. A lot of my things don't necessarily mimic a wave, but it's kind of the idea of a wave. And I've kind of been transitioning to more of this style. And if you look at her wardrobe, again, all the crazy geometric stuff and all the designs, it's just, we draw from a lot of that. And again, the black and gray is that sort of perfect idea for this. It goes from a real dark to a real light. And even on his upper chest, this one's a little bit of a cover-up as well, but when it gets down lower, I can be softer with some of the grays because I'm not trying to cover something. I'm not trying to hide everything. So you get a feel for how that last image, that black and gray to that black and gray. Who would have thought that would have any direct correlation? But it does. At least in my mind, it does. And the same thing there. The lettering down below as it transitions up and then into the flames. It's the same kind of idea. Same thing here. Just kind of combine those. This dude, same thing. We did this from midnight to 3 in the morning, and by the time I got done, he was done. So we have to color this one yet, but if you look close, there's what we call Kuniyoshi dribble, and Kuniyoshi is another woodblock master, and he did this thing that's kind of like this breakup of black. How do I say it? It's almost like dots or shapes, and if you look closely, you can see them. They're kind of little bundles in there. And just these weird placed dots that are just fun with tattooing. It makes it kind of fun. And it gives a different look to it. So we call that the Kuniyoshi dribble because he was famous for it in all of his prints. And if you look on his neck, I did cherry blossoms with flames. But it's a geometric cherry blossom. I kind of took a cherry blossom and changed it and made it almost tribal, which is what Brian was saying earlier. It's a cultural thing. I kind of made it this tribal image. That who would have ever thought a cherry blossom would look cool as a graphic image like that? But I love the way they look. I just think they look great. And there you can see a little bit of the Kuniyoshi dribble kind of coming off. So those are done in a black, and those other grays are going to be a lot softer. So you'll see that dribble as it heals more. It's just a whole different look to it. And there, it's more of that gray that I was talking about, where some of my stuff is getting real fluid. And it's just kind of like this feeling I have. It's not anything specific. It's not water. It's not waves. It's not wind. It's like this smoke, foggy thing. It could be all of the above or none of the above. So you can see the detail in the fish in front, and then the background's got this real soft feel to it that just kind of lets that image pop out in front, but it does help give it a background. And there, this is a really great image of it, where you see the fish down below. And it's this feeling or movement that I have. And this was a real big cover-up, and that's why it's real dark in some areas and lighter in the others. But it's that idea with the cover-up that, we use that black, kind of ran with that feeling. Same thing, that kind of little loop on that thing in the back. It just, when I was drawing it on with a marker on him, my hand just goes, and it's just got this feeling to it, and I just do it now. So it's not anything that I set out to make that shape, but it's just the mood I'm in when I do it. And, this poor guy, I said to him, he's like, what are we going to do for my cover? I go, we're going to do a bunch of little fishes and a crab. And, the response was, I don't want crabs, dude. I don't want crabs. And he's like, everyone's going to joke. I got crabs on me. I'm like, look, trust me, it's going to be really cool. And now every one of his friends is like, dude, I want your buddy to tattoo a crab on me. Because they love the way it turned out. And I'm like, you gotta let me do my thing. You gotta let me give my vision, And some of these people just come in and let me do my thing, which is great. So, perfect example of the snow-filled trees and the snow temples. You can't beat it. But this one, I also included because of the Japanese lanterns. And Japanese lanterns are a ton of fun, and they look great. They look great without lights in them. They look even better when they're lit up. They look even better when you do the Japanese lanterns and you light them and send them off into the sky. And I don't know if people originally did that and then the artists drew from those and would, do drawings of that or prints of that or paintings of that because of the aesthetic quality to it. But I was fortunate enough this summer that we did this here in Toledo. And if you look at that sky and the background, you can't tell me, and I see that orange to the blue, tell me that's not a Japanese woodblock print. I mean, it's a perfect example of it. And those trees in the background being the black silhouettes, it's a perfect example of a Japanese woodblock print. You can't deny that. So again, is this art imitating life or is life imitating art? It's one of those things that's kind of full circle. And there are the lanterns in the sky. Look at that sky and look at it coming down into that orange. That is what the Japanese woodblock prints are trying to recreate. And if you ask me, they do a beautiful job. This is what I was saying. Remember that sky? Because that's it. They capture it, and you get it now. So then I went to New York last year, and this guy wanted some Japanese lanterns. And so we did some lanterns on his arm, and we decided to have some of them ripped open with flames coming out, and put koi fish on the outside of them, so when we color them, they're going to be real cool. We didn't get all of it done because it was just a convention I worked at, so we got as much done as we could. And there's some of the flames kind of coming out of one of the lanterns, and again, you see that kind of swoosh on the back of the elbow there. It's just these, just this feeling of things that I do now. It's not, it's more of a cloud or a mist in the background, but there's no hard line to that. It's just something I kind of, as I draw on him, I kind of start tattooing and run with it when I do that. And the cherry blossoms floating in the wind and the petals falling off each of the cherry blossoms. It's just a fun tattoo. But it just was inspiring to me when I got to do this because I've seen the lanterns and I get it. And now it's all, like I said, it's just that full circle that it comes around. So it's kind of cool. That top piece there on the inside of his arm is, again, like the Japanese temples or any of the little stone garden lanterns that they have. I use a lot of those too, and I do a lot of them in the negative to kind of create this cool image where they pop out because they just have great shapes to them. They're just a lot of fun. So that's just another example of that kind of explosion of water and the water turmoil down below, which is what we use a lot of. When you see that black and blue background, which could be for a sky like you saw in the real life photo of lighting, and again there's kind of the explosion of the wave and the water sort of coming out from below it and shooting off into the top area. And these are huge, chrysanthemums that they lend themselves beautifully to be tattooed. They use them for their prints and their paintings, and we use them for the tattoos. And there's a full view of it. He came in, he had that forearm portion done, but I did everything else. You can see that forearm portion. It was kind of a cover-up originally, and then I added all the other things to it, below and above all that. And you can see the soft black and gray background and the color in the front, the different colors in the leaves, how it kind of just has a great feel for it and kind of lends itself to tattooing very well. That's on the inside of his arm. Now this is a guy who has the fish and the crab on his other arm. We did this arm first, actually. So here we are now that the woodblock masters are doing prints of Japanese men who are tattooed. So talk about coming full circle. Again, now that the tattoo thing went off, started getting huge in Japan, they thought, why not make prints of these guys? It's perfect. It lends itself beautifully. Again, look at they're draped in the same old, style of material and clothing, but yet they're showing them and showing their tattoos. It's beautiful. And how could they not stick in the chrysanthemum and peony flowers? Because that's what they had tattooed on them. And koi fish, and it's like they just put it all together. So same thing, chrysanthemum. That's one of the guys I work with. I did that on his neck. There's another one with that same sort of style that I did. It comes from the Sumi watercolor painting, where you just do like a real soft outline and then kind of color in the rest of it. Just kind of fun. Same thing, and this one, he's got like the cherry blossoms tattooed all over him. It's perfect. These things they're amazing. And then here is a client of mine that we started like a big back piece, and I was walking through the exhibit yesterday, and they have a samurai suit in there, and it's the same thing. It's like I found a samurai mask that I love. I kind of redrew it, stuck a dragon with it. We got to still outline the bottom. We're still working on this one, but this thing's going to be so much fun by the time I get done with it. And it was a samurai mask, and who would have thought, oh hey, it's going to make a great back piece, but it will when we're done eventually. So, and this guy, same thing, New York, he's like, what are you going to do on me? I go, I don't know, how about a toad? And he, really, a toad? I'm like, yeah, I did a crab on a guy, trust me, a toad will be cool. So we did toad, and now he loves it, and the same thing, all his friends were like, dude, I want your buddy to tattoo a frog or a toad on me. But it's just fun, and there's a real classic Japanese rock kind of background. And then these are images from Horiyoshi II, who's a Japanese master, but it just kind of shows, I just put these in to kind of go right along with that. How perfect is that to that? The real deal with the print. So, and that's where it really came from. So you can see where I'm drawing my inspiration from and where they drew their inspiration from. You can't beat it. This one I threw in here. This was done so far, so long ago, but if anyone is familiar with Basquiat, this is like a Basquiat painting. This is a Japanese woodblock master print. And it reminds me of a Basquiat painting. Like, it's amazing. I just threw it in because it's like, every time I see this one, it kind of cracks me up, and I'm thinking, this guy was so ahead of his time, but everyone must have thought he was crazy and nuts when he did this print, and they probably looked at it and were just like, yeah, don't get it. You should lock that dude up because he's not right in the head. But, now I look at it, I'm going, wow, this guy was so advanced, it's scary. So I decided to throw it in there because it was cool. I also draw from everything in life. The kimonos that they have in here, I love the textile patterns on them. And this is a book of Japanese fabric or material. And this stuff is great for tattooing, and it's great for painting, and it's great for anything you want to do with it. So, again, look at the waves on that. You couldn't get any better for tattooing. And look at all the different shades and dimensions and depth. And this is a whole sleeve that I did on a gentleman who I did it in what I call my sort of Japanese textile pattern. I did it totally different than what I would normally do a Japanese thing. The coloring on the flowers are done like a color pattern on a fabric, and the waves are done kind of like that other image. And the leaves aren't outlined, and they're kind of left with space, and they're just different. And the coloring is done kind of on this weird, almost like tie-dye style or a fabric stained style. It's not done normally. Normally you'd go from the center out or from out in, and I did it in this different idea. And Scott, the gentleman who wears this tattoo, He says, I can't go anywhere without anybody stopping me all day long and asking me about it because they've never seen anything like it. And it's because I was inspired by that. Like, that's it. There's nothing else. It's just patterns, textile. So it's just something that I think is kind of cool. And again, art can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be on the walls of a museum. You can find it in whatever you think is artistic. So it's just kind of fun. Another chrysanthemum. Just a dragon tattoo I've done, and it just shows you that. There's a little bit more of that Kuniyoshi dribble. These little black things in the background, almost like little meteorites or something going through the sky. I just threw this one in there to kind of show you some of the coloring and some of the a little more modern stuff. This one I just finished on a guy about 2 or 3 months ago, I think. Maybe a little longer than that. And this one, it's the same thing. It's a stained glass thing, and it's not drawn from Japanese ideas, but the coloring of it and the idea that it was sort of done from a church thing kind of makes it fun, and the shape and the colors, and that stained glass can be inspiring, and that it's beautiful, and it's just kind of this new thing that who would have thought it would look good in tattooing. And then I kind of, the kind of what got me into the museum here was they carry my pens and business card holders and my dinnerware. And this is just kind of showing the process of how I go through some of my rough sketches to get to my final sketches. And these are little thumbnail sketches of what I was doing for the pens itself. So these are the actual images that I drew to kind of give me an idea. And then, you know, the shapes of those are what I have to work with. And that's the idea for my business card holder. I did 3 different ideas, and we chose the one in the middle. And then here's when I finally kind of got the final idea. You know, these are what I ink out, and I go back and color those. So, and then the winner of the tattoo contest, actually, I have this actual paper that they're going to get to take home, so it's kind of cool. And there were some other ideas I had for like a Japanese idea, traditional Americana, just a little different. And then there's some other ones with the cherry blossoms and the koi fish. You see my waves are even different there, so it's like as time goes, you know, my waves change. And then there's like a color rendering I do, so we get the colors right and the ideas right, because it's a whole process when you're working. It's one process when I'm working on skin, but it's another process when I'm working with a manufacturer, and we have to match the Pantone colors and create all these things, so it makes it a lot different. So there's the color renderings for those. And then there's my dinnerware line, so that was the original drawing for the dragon that I did that's on the plates. And the koi fish. So again, it just kind of shows that process. And there was one that we didn't do, but it was a tribal one. I really wanted to do that one, but they didn't like it so much. But kind of how it is. And the same thing with that one. I kind of really liked that one. But so going back to the whole art thing, it is what it is. And it could be anything. I did a piece with Asics shoes that I did these guitars, and we gave them away at a triathlon series. And I ended up designing these guitars and building them myself. So the original drawing was the kind of artwork. I had some of the stuff laser engraved at a friend's place. I mean, I took these things apart myself, pretty much did everything hands-on, with the exception of engraving it. I had my buddy do that. And slowly, in my garage, I started transforming these things into kind of a cool piece of art. And, you know, who would have thought that a guitar could kind of be something like this? You know, most people just think a guitar, okay, it's just one color, you just play it. Well, I mean, I laser engraved it, I gold leafed it, I painted it, I pinstriped it. Even on the knobs, I had all that stuff laser etched so that there was little things that meant things. 33 was the actual shoe model that they were kind of trying to push. It said Asics on the bridge of the guitar. It said Asics on the, like right across the bottom of the bridge and up on the headstock. So it was just kind of fun to do projects like this. And it's like, again, art can pretty much be whatever you make of it. It can be a craft. But it can also be, again, you know, you can see it, put a little Asics spiral in the little plastic piece up top. So I left no thing unturned. kind of fun. You can see the pinstriping there. I even made the little wooden, I guess they call it the pick guard. I made it out of walnut so it would match the deeper woods a little better, because the one that they sent us in the box was just a classic plastic one, so I made my own. And same thing, it said A6 up on the, I don't know what they call those, the little tuning dials. But just kind of ideas. On the back, I had the shoe print, so it looked like somebody kind of ran across it in mud, you know. And that was the shoe that they were promoting, so that was like trying to tie everything in together. It was just fun. So there you see, I mean, this laser engraving is insane, the detail they can get. You can see it right there, how small they can get with everything. It's pretty spectacular. I mean, you can see the little A6 logo in that thing. It's crazy. So I did 4 of these, and even like the cases, Stop It Never is one of the A6 mottos, you know. So I did this, the cases itself. So here's one that was going to Austin, and this was the idea. Japanese waves, kind of perfect, because it was for triathlon, so it was the running, swimming, and biking. So there's that one. I stripped it down completely, laser engraved it, did another wooden pick guard for it. You got the shoe print on one side, the bike gears on the other, the waves, so you kind of got all 3. It says, I don't know if you can see it there, but it says Austin in the bridge, because this one was at Austin Triathlon. So I kind of tried to combine everything and did like the country letters, so it says Austin up in the headstock there. And on the back, I created out of the waves, I created A6, they call that the tiger stripe. So again, it's just one of those things that's kind of perfect. You know, it's like everything just kind of flowed together. And then, you know, Austin's motto is keep Austin weird. So since there's a triathlon, I spelled it like try, keep Austin weird. Put the flag on there, kind of made it fun. This one was for San Diego, for the same series, the triathlon one. So I put the Chargers logo. I took the San Diego baseball logo, and I changed it so it was an S, B, and an R, so it was for swim, bike, run. So I kind of changed that up a little bit, put the tiger stripe logo in there, and I flat blacked the whole thing on this one, since it was like a SoCal thing. You know, everybody driving around in their cars, all matte black and all that. So I kind of tried to match each area where we were going. And then this was another one we gave away in San Diego. And since San Diego is such a huge marine port, all the old sailors used to get tattooed. I figured, perfect. And I kind of gave her a little A6 tattoo on her butt for that one. The A6 loved that. They were like, that's awesome. So there it is, finished. I mean, you can even see, there's certain qualities about things in life that I draw inspiration from. That yellow tint from the engraving being burned, there's a really cool quality about that. And I pick up inspiration from everything, whether it's wallpaper, whether it's a car driving by, or whether it's a happy accident like this. Like, there's just a really cool quality about that. I mean, I ended up sanding it down and cleaning it up, but something like that, I'll do something like that in the future again and keep that burned in quality so you can see how that wood burned. So, and then there's the front of it. Like in the snake on that one up top, I put the A6 logo on that for the little pattern, but kind of fun. So, when I was a kid and when I did artwork here, the first thing I remember doing here was a paper mache mask, and I'll never forget it. So when I brought my kids here this summer and they were doing artwork in the basement, it was pretty much that full circle thing going around, and it was really cool, and it was really heartfelt for me. So this is something that I learned how to do paper mache at the Toledo Museum of Art, and here I am at 40 years old doing paper mache for projects for my kids. So I kind of put this one up here to show you that, again, it's like, it's not what it is, it's how you do it and how you kind of go through the movement of it, and it just makes it fun and it makes it art. So this one I kind of wanted to see. I thought it's funny if anybody could guess. Some of my family already know this one, but if you can kind of guess what this is, and this is going to be a Halloween costume. So it kind of slowly progresses, little by little, and you'll kind of start getting a feel for it. But this is something that I kind of started doing with my kids, and pretty much, you know, and there it is. So my kid was a minion for Halloween one year, and, you know, I can thank that all to the Toledo Museum of Art because I learned how to do paper mache here.